seems like we might have a Fantastic Four, which is really, it's crazy. It's surreal that it feels like this is actually the one we're going to end up with. So I just wanted to go over the 4 people that it is, talk about why I think this is a realistic leak, and just in general go through each one, talk about what I like about them. Because I do really think this is good casting. Like, I think these are all picks that make complete sense. I know they're not everybody's favorite for every role, but at least for me, this is very satisfying. This is a team that I'm like, wow, they got some good actors that fit these roles and prove that this is not exactly what we think, right? They did not just cast, say, Penn Badgley. Not say that that's a bad pick. Penn Badgley would have been a good Mr. Fantastic, probably. But, like, he kind of looks like Mr. Fantastic. He plays a character. He's like a sociopath, which isn't quite what Mr. Fantastic is. But, like, I would say there's characters like that and casting like that I think is very safe. And I don't think it's necessarily wrong. But at the same time, they made these kind of surprising picks. And it gives me faith that there is vision in this movie. Now, why, right now, do we think this leak is more serious than any of the other ones? Honestly, with me, it's all about feeling. I just feel like this one's different. The media treated it differently. News reporters like Deadline had articles that were like, this is probably the Fantastic Four, as opposed to like these leaks. And there have been a lot of leaks recently and like rumors about different casting. Superman I've seen a lot of where the headline says like, these are definitely the guys that they're looking at. And then when you get into the article, it's like, also, there are just a couple of names on the list. It's a big list. They're not in first place or anything. So I think sometimes the websites tend to sensationalize this kind of stuff. However, I do think this feels like it's being reported on in a way that is very serious and also just simple. It's like, these are the guys. These are all the ones that are in contention. And all of them, to some extent, are names that have floated through the process in some way or another. So they all seem plausible, considering we've had a lot of leaks so far, but all of these guys were on the list, except for one I didn't see too much of, but I do believe he was on the list. So anyway, let's start with Mr. Fantastic, Adam Driver. A fantastic pick. Yes, he does not look like Mr. Fantastic exactly. Adam Driver doesn't look like anyone exactly, right? He has like what you would call kind of an interesting face. Not to say he's not handsome or anything like that, but he's not like, again, Penn Badgley or, you know, Tom Ellis, Lucifer, another person that kind of popped up on these lists. I'm not saying anything wrong with him. I think he's very talented, and he'd probably be a good Mr. Fantastic. But like compared to him, Adam Driver has a more unconventional look. That being said, the characters he plays, people he's known for playing, are very multifaceted. He plays complicated characters. Marriage Story, you know, Last Duel, even Star Wars. Not to say that like Star Wars is high art or anything like that, but he's playing a role that he's very conflicted. There's a lot going on internally. You can feel this struggle within him. I think Last Duel, he's more of a straight up villain, and like Marriage Story, it's very complicated. And I think you could kind of see some bits of Mr. Fantastic in Marriage Story, a little bit. You can see this father who's kind of struggling to hold everything together, right? You can see these expectations that have been weighing on this character. That's a big part of what he's so upset about when the relationship starts to fall apart. I mean, I've seen Adam Driver in quite a few things. I also think one thing that I love about Adam Driver, and I do love about most of these guys, I'm not incredibly familiar with our Johnny, who we'll get to, is Adam Driver's very funny. I think Adam Driver has what might be the most iconic SNL sketch of the last decade. Maybe in Matt the Radar Technician. Not in terms of iconic like Matt Foley, motivational speaker. What is it with the Matts on SNL? I mean, we're very funny, I guess. It's funny to think about people doing a job named Matt. But the idea that he is like, he's an actor. He both takes himself very seriously. I've seen him in interviews. I believe he's one of those guys that doesn't watch his own movies at premieres because he finds it uncomfortable. You don't see him doing a ton of interviews, but at the same time, he'll play a silly version of Kylo Ren because it's fun and because he understands the joke and he can kind of see the value in that. And I think that's really valuable in an actor like this. You want somebody who can, who can play serious, who can play big, but also you don't want somebody who takes themselves so seriously that this role won't be fun. And I do think that the chemistry on set for this role, all four of these guys, is going to be a humongous part of whether this movie feels like it works or feels like it doesn't. I think he also feels like Adam Driver, as an actor, as a person, I guess, feels like a person who's smart. not necessarily like a super scientist genius or a nerd, but someone who is thinking. He's got a lot going on in his brain. And I think that's really something that Mr. Fantastic's gonna have to deal with. I do think the other thing maybe that it's hard to do with Adam Driver, he has not he's had this very specific look for a while, which is the Kylo Ren look, the longer hair. He's kind of a little scruffier. I'd be interested to see what he looks like really cleaned up and kind of with that classic Mr. Fantastic, gray temples, short black or brown, whatever they end up doing hair. But I mean, overall, I think it is hard to deny that Adam Driver, just as an actor, one of our best working right now. He's takes really interesting projects. I can't remember what the name of it was. That movie that just came out is based on the book. We're Googling things. Shit just got real. Oh, White Noise, right? His spot in White Noise. It was a little weird. I didn't really enjoy that movie, but he put a lot into it. He was able to get some emotion from a very kind of reserved, almost like Wes Anderson style performance. I just think Adam Driver is very talented. And again, I'd love to see, I'm sure there's fan art now, but I think there's something to a pick like that where I'm like, oh, he's a great actor. He's got a ton of range. He fits the age range. He's 40. So that's like the age you'd want your Mr. Fantastic to be. Feels like a dad. It seems like they're going to go the dad route. But yeah, looking at some of the things he's been in recently, Marriage Story, Black Klansman, Logan Lucky. He was very good in Logan Lucky. I don't know. He's one of those actors you just never count out. It's like Adam Driver, he's going to give you something. Next up, Sue Storm, Margot Robbie. So I think we are all pretty familiar with who Margot Robbie is. I think the problem is she turned in what is one of the all-time iconic comic book roles, right? Her Harley Quinn is perfect. It is insanely watchable. She is very talented. She's one of those actors that looks exactly like Harley Quinn. Like she just looks like a comic book character come to life. But at the same time, she does that voice real well. Like you'd expect a voice actor to do. Also very physical. Like she's got a great stunt presence from what I understand. And she's just also very funny. Doesn't take herself too seriously. I think she's not what most people expected when they looked at Invisible Woman. I think there were a lot of options for Invisible Woman, and she was on my short list of 9, where I was like, could be any of these. And I think she's a good pick. I think she's very, honestly, for me, most of why I didn't go with her was that I was like, well, she's busy. She's got these, these DC things to do, and Barbie and stuff like that. But what I think the thing is with Margot Robbie is we've forgotten how much range she actually has. And when I think about that, I go back to I, Tonya. Because, sure, Harley Quinn is this big, bombastic, cartoon character, really brought to life where, all of her lines are with that ridiculous Brooklyn accent. Her performance is very big. She's playing in the cheap seats. I, Tonya was a different kind of role. I would say I, Tonya is a more grounded, more human role than Harley Quinn. Yes, she's supposed to feel like the center of this big, giant story, but at the same time, she is a person. She has flaws. She is supposed to be very relatable, and I think she can do that. I think with Barbie and Harley Quinn, Margot Robbie has kind of been branded as this kind of almost silly cartoon character. And I think Margot Robbie has more range than we give her credit for. I also think, as we just mentioned, because of I, Tonya, she is a very good actor. She's turned in a lot of really good performances, and I think she can handle Sue. I understand people wanted Jodie Comer. I think Jodie Comer would have been good as well. I think that was the name that came up the most. But I don't think this is a role that requires a very specific skill set. It requires someone who has a lot of range, has a lot of chemistry with the people that she's working with. That's really important, and that's something that I don't think we could assemble this all-star list of people that are really good actors, look exactly like the character. So let's say we got everybody wanted. Seth Rogen, the guy from Stranger Things, the brother who dies in the second season for Johnny, Jodie Comer as Sue, and then Tom Ellis as Reed. They could have bad chemistry together, and then the movie could be bad. And chemistry is something that you can't really, you can fake it, but if you want actors who are going to work well together, and specifically you want a family where this dynamic is going to feel natural, it's like there are actors that feel exactly like the characters in the comic books, and then there are actors whose relationships feel like a family. And that's what the Fantastic Four is. They're the first family in comics, and that was their defining, the thing that set them apart from other comic characters at the time. Was that dynamic was all very much at the forefront of those comics. Again, I think Sue, if you ever read a lot of Sue, can do a lot of different things. She's a mom. She's also a spy. She's also like an ambassador. She's a scientist. She's a wife. She's a sister. Like there's a lot going on. You need someone who does have a big, broad skill set. And I don't think that Jodie Comer wouldn't have that, but I think Margot Robbie does. I'm going to look at her IMDb real quick and just see what else is going on with her. But she is like Adam Driver in that she can do more than I think we give her credit for. Right, she was in Babylon. People seem to like that. I haven't really seen that. Bombshell, which I haven't seen. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Small role, but solid. I, Tonya, Big Short for 1/2 of a second. Yeah, I don't know. I think she's good. I really do. I think Barbie's going to be fun. And I think she's just got a lot of range. I'm very happy that she's on this team. Paul Mescal, I am not super familiar with. He is the Johnny of this group. Here's my thing with Paul Mescal. I think there's a lot of Johnnies out there. Like, I know I kind of joked, the brother from Stranger Things. I don't remember this actor's name, but the one that was in Power Rangers. He would probably be a good Johnny. I think a lot of young, like the young, exciting actors with a big personality who can be like the center of attention can do Johnny. I don't know much about Paul Mescal. I'm kind of under the impression that's not exactly what he's known for, which is interesting. After Sun seems to be very human, kind of simple performance. It's a very complicated character. Lost Daughter was the other thing I've kind of looked up to hear about him. He's got the lead in the Gladiator sequel. The thing with Paul Mescal is he's just a good actor. And I don't think doing what he would have to do here as Johnny is very hard. I think out of all of them, this was the easiest cast. So I'll give it to him that Paul Mescal's probably also a good pick. I do believe Margot Robbie, I'm almost positive, is my age. Like, I think she's also 33, 34, something like that. Paul Mescal, born in 1996, which means he is currently 27, which does put him significantly younger than Sue. And I don't think that's bad. I actually like that a lot. I like this, almost 13-year gap between Johnny and Reed. They feel like they're part of different generations. They're going to see the world differently, fundamentally, just by being different people and obviously being different kinds of guys, but also by being from different almost eras. And I think that's really valuable. Yeah, Paul Mescal, I've got to watch After Sun. It just kind of seems like a bummer. And it's one of those movies that I got to be in the right mood to watch. But by all accounts, he's very good in it. He seems like a solid actor. I know there was rumors that he was not going to do it, like he'd turn this role down. And that's kind of why I'm like, if they're saying he took this role, that means he probably did. Because you could, if this news came out and it was clear that he had not taken it, like it was like, no, he turned it down yesterday, says he'll never do it, then Deadline would not report that. No one would report it. I think he was probably, it's a couple of things. Possibly that was something that was true at one point. It was no longer true. Wasn't true when it was reported, but then maybe it was true a month ago. He also could have been negotiating in public, which is a big thing. You say like, oh, Paul Mescal doesn't want to do Fantastic Four. And then a lot of people go, oh, really? Paul Mescal would have been perfect. And then Kevin Feige goes, all right, Paul Mescal, instead of 10 million, you're getting 12 million. That's reasonable. That happens in Hollywood. I don't think he's getting paid 12 million. But that could have been what was going on the whole time. It also could just be him. It could just be he was like the amount of money or the role or the script didn't vibe with him. And then he took some time with it and decided it did. But the fact that he's part of this crew and this casting feels very legit to me. Like that makes it all feel more realistic. And then you got our number 4, our Ben Grimm. So to lead in here, I was never a huge fan of Seth Rogen, and I was never a humongous fan of Jason Segel for this role. I didn't like either of them for this role. I like them enough. I think they are 4 different things. I'm sure they could have done it. I do think there's a lot of value in getting a Jewish actor for this role. Specifically because, and we've talked this to death, but I still see people talking about it on the internet and comments, this character, Ben Grimm, was very specifically written to be pretty much Jack Kirby. And this character, by all accounts, was Jewish in the sense that, like, that was a defining, like, that was something that's true at the heart of the character. They weren't allowed to really say it until, like, the 2000s. He got his bar mitzvah. But, like, on the Hanukkah cards that Jack Kirby sent out, the Thing was wearing a yarmulke. Like, so that was, like, that was an unspoken thing. Also, like I said, Thing is Jack Kirby. He lives on Yancey Street, or he's raised on Yancey Street, which is like Jack Kirby was raised on Delancey Street. Ben, I believe, is Jack Kirby's middle name, or Jack is Ben Grimm's middle name. One of those. Also, the Thing is kind of a golem, which is a thing that I know, broad strokes, is, I believe, some sort of kind of mystical creature created from mud or clay that is usually part of Jewish kind of folklore tradition, and it protects people, and that is very much what Ben Grimm not just represents, but like what he physically is. So all that went into this character and was a vital part of the character being created back in the day. He has become one of like the top 3, like, highest profile Jewish characters, I would say, in comics. And I would say most of them are in Marvel, if you don't count Batman, but like characters where it's a big part of their identity. It's him, Magneto, and Kitty Pryde. There's others, there's plenty of others, but those are the 3 to me where I'm like, that is not only something that is true about the character, but that is very much written into a lot of their stories, and that colors how they see the world more than, I don't know, not even more than a character like Songbird or Moon Knight, but in a way that, like, they're A, it's a big part of their identity, and B, they're at the front of comics. Like, there's gonna be Fantastic Four comics until the sun goes out. Like, they're a big part of Marvel. So I think that's important. All that being said, so I think I understand the people that say they would like to see a Jewish actor take up this very important Jewish role. What might be the most important Jewish character in Marvel comics for sure. You know, right up there with Magneto and Kitty Pryde. And that did narrow down the field significantly, because it's not just that we needed a Jewish actor, we also needed a kind of tough guy with a heart of gold kind of actor, you know, big, giant voice, presence, also able to be very sad, play that kind of am I a monster thing. And I think that is a very difficult cast. I'd say out of the 4, this is the trickiest cast. Also, I think you run into a problem here where if you're just looking at the 3 we've already got, it's 3 white people. Now, they are 4 white people in the comics. There's nothing wrong, in theory, with the Fantastic Four all being white. However, it's the kind of thing you kind of expect these days, where you look at characters from the 60s, that were created in the 60s, where everybody was white and all their villains were white and all their friends were white. And you go like, well, that's not because they were like, let's make these guys white for an important reason. It's just like, well, that's the default. So obviously that's what they're all going to look like. And looking at this through a modern lens, yeah, it's reasonable to ask like, hey, why isn't there an important character in this group that is person of color? Alicia Masters in the original movies was that. And then you had, Johnny Storm in the bad one, and 4-6. Well, it's not very good. He was fine in it. But I do think if we came out with an all-white cast, regardless of what they do with Doom's another thing, it's complicated, this would be kind of tricky. That, like, it's not ideal. Like people have said many times, Marvel's supposed to reflect the world outside your window. The world outside your window now is different than it was in 1960. Or at least we are more willing to show that part of the world than we were back in the day. Like we back in the day, there was a very narrow view, and since then it is widened out to a point where it's just more realistic, more representative of the world around us. And these guys are from New York City. Like, they're not from, I don't know, Russia or something. So it makes sense for one of them to not be white. I think Reed, there is some value in him being a white character, because he's supposed to be kind of confident. He's supposed to be the prototypical patriarch. I think in the same way, Johnny doesn't have to be white, but I do think there's something there in the kind of archetype that he is, right? This, like, in the movie does extreme sports, but just lives like a really charmed life. He's got supermodels, he's having fun. Well, I think Michael B. Jordan worked there. I also think there's something to having this, young kid also be white. And it's like, he's got it all. He's got all the privilege, everything you could hope for, as opposed to some of these other members of the family and other superheroes and people he's going to interact with. If you want Johnny and Sue to be like blood relatives, probably going to get a white Sue too. So then we've got just Ben. Now, there's a lot of problems theoretically or like hypothetically with the idea of making the one non-white character in this group also the monster and the guy that thinks he's the monster. I think there's opportunity here, depending on who's writing it and what they do with this character, to make that part of this character, to make this like movie kind of an examination of that. And on the other hand, if these three guys, Mr. Fantastic, Sue Storm, Johnny Storm, they were going to be these actors, foregone conclusion, I definitely wouldn't be like, well, then we have this really qualified actor for this role who's not going to get it because we don't want to make that character. But you know what I mean? You don't want to exclude someone in that position because of their skin color. Like, that's also bad. I think Daveed Diggs is also just a really talented performer, right? Like, I didn't see The Little Mermaid. I probably won't, but obviously, everybody's seen Hamilton. I remember him on Kimmy Schmidt. I think Daveed Diggs, as a Broadway guy, first of all, I've heard people say, well, his voice doesn't sound like the thing, but he's a singer, and he plays two different characters in that show. Like, I'm sure he can do a very convincing and very, like, not just convincing in terms of, like, this sounds like a real voice, but also, like, he's able to act through it. I believe he's able to do that and make his voice maybe deeper, more like New York, I'm walking here, whatever they want to do with Ben Grimm, if that's what they want to do. On top of that, he's Jewish, which is great. I did not realize his name is Daveed because his parents wanted to name him David as a nod to his Jewish heritage. And I think in the stories, his dad was like, yeah, but let's do Daveed because that's kind of cooler. I agree. It's a cool name. This is a very interesting casting decision. And I think he's probably going to be great. Like, I think this was a really tough role to cast. And Daveed gives me a lot of faith that they're going to do something cool with this character. I hope that they're able not to, like, sidestep the racial issues with having your one non-white character also be the Monster Man. But I hope they're able to do something interesting with it. I don't know who's even writing this movie anymore. I feel like a lot of this one's in flux, and obviously writer strike, so we'll see. But we'll probably find out more about that soon. I imagine this will all get announced fully at San Diego Comic-Con. That's probably the plan. During the Disney presentation, the four of them will come out. I'm still interested in Doom. I'm surprised we haven't gotten a Doom announcement. I've heard Antonio Banderas for Galactus, and like even recently Antonio Banderas is saying like I was doing a facial scan for a role I'm doing soon. So like that sounds great. And he's cool. I like Antonio Banderas. I've always enjoyed him in Zorro and Puss in Boots and other roles that he's been in. The Dr. Dolittle movie he's fine in. I do still think that we could see a Jamie Dornan Doom. Honestly, just because I don't know who else they've got. Like, I haven't heard too many other people rumored for this role. And if our Reed is now 40, and our Doom and our Reed went to college at the same time, and you would assume the same age. And if we're keeping that side, which we very well may, abandon, then a 40-ish-year-old Doom, someone, older, like, it kind of just cancels out guys like Dev Patel, who I also really like, but is a little bit younger. Now, they totally could still do Dev Patel, and I think that'd be very cool. I believe, I don't know all the details on this, but Dr. Doom being Romani, if you're not going to get a Romani actor, Indian, apparently there is a connection that is recognized by the Romani people, that is part of their ancestry, so that's not bad. I do really like Dev Patel. I think he's a really, really talented actor. I'm not sure if I think he can be scary. I don't think I've seen that from him. I don't think he plays a lot of villains, not besides that Avatar movie. It's not something he's known for. On the other hand, I think he's a really good actor, so I'm sure he could figure it out. And maybe Doom isn't even in this movie. Very possible. I think it would be a waste. And I also think if you're Kevin Feige, you want to cast a Doom. But if the story doesn't have Doom in it, if it's Galactus and it's space and stuff like that, then yeah, whatever. I guess don't put him in. But at this point, especially with the Kang situation being as in flux as it is, not the worst time to throw a Doom into the mix. Overall, I think this cast is great. I think they're all actors that are very talented. They all have, you can see it, right? You can see what they're going for with some of these guys. You can see Adam Driver and Mr. Fantastic, like what he can bring to that character. At the same time, he is not the obvious pick. And I think that's pretty cool. I trust Marvel with casting. I've always trusted them with this. I don't think they've miscast more than maybe 1 or 2 roles in the entire run of the MCU. Honestly, I can't even think of who those might be, but I'm sure there's 1 or 2 in there that we all love. But like for the most part, they're great, and I'm glad we may finally have this down. Like these might be the guys. That is cool. This all could also be bullshit. This could be not true. We'll find out soon. A couple notes. A, I saw that you guys said that you wanted more pictures, especially when introducing a person who you may not be super familiar with. I get that. Also, this one's pretty long, kind of rambly for 4 people. It's because A, I think there's a lot to look at here, and B, this is kind of me going through this out loud for the first time and, figuring out how I feel about it. So that's what you get, and that's what this is. Obviously, still making other videos. Got my X-Men director who should direct the X-Men movie on Nebula right now. Working on a couple of other videos for this month because I only have one main Nando V Movies video out, so I'm going to have 3 this month, ideally, including on the Nando Cut. We'll also have a review of Flash, which I'm seeing soon, and a lot of videos based on movies that are coming out, probably Transformers, never get a look at that. So keep an eye out for that. Thank you all so much. Mostly Nitpicking has been fantastic. Our Transformers Last Night episode, so funny. If you've never seen that movie, it is bizarre. It's the Cogman Show starring Mark Wahlberg and friends, but our podcast episode on that was great. The show is called Mostly Nitpicking. If you haven't heard me talk about it before, or if you've ever been like, should I listen to that? I would give it a shot. It's pretty fun. It's also long, but that's just the style of it. Some people are into that sort of thing. So that's all I got. Stay safe, everybody. Take care.